At the time of European colonialism, China was under the rule of the Qing dynasty. During this time, people were made to pay taxes in silver. This caused them to have to sell their labor or products in exchange for the precious metal. Thus, the Chinese economy became very regionalized as more and more people devoted large plots of land to one product. The constant trade between sectors rather than within cities stimulated China's growing economy. Western civilization saw a large demand for silver as an opportunity to participate in the affluent markets of China. At this time, Western businessmen were middlemen in that the silver that was mined in Western colonies was ultimately funneled into China in exchange for products such as silk or porcelain. But after a series of internal uprisings and international wars in the 19th century, Qing China was reduced to an informal colony of various countries with a rapidly declining economy. In the 1830s, opium imports from the West increased from roughly 150,000 pounds in 1773 to roughly 3,450,000 pounds in 1832. Opium is a highly addictive or lucrative drug and found a profitable market in China. Western countries saw opium as a way to cover their trade imbalance with China. Opium importation was illegal, and merchants had to smuggle the product from India. Nonetheless, millions of Chinese of all classes became addicted to the drug, and the large amounts of silver used to pay for it created severe economic consequences for China. In 1838, the Chinese emperor decided to crack down on illegal opium trade. The British were offended by the seizure of the product and sent their navy to end China's crackdown on opium. The British had a conclusive victory over China, and the First Opium War ended in 1842 with the Treaty of Nanjing. The second article appointed superintendents or consular officers to govern British businesses located in China in place of the Chinese government. This article shows a significant loss of China's independent management of its own economy. The treaty also opened up 5 ports for European traders. In general, the Treaty of Nanjing was largely in favor of Britain and placed restrictions on Chinese sovereignty.
After the First Opium War, people in China were agitated by the Qing dynasty. In 1850, the Taiping Rebellion began, led by Hong Xiuquan. According to Dr. Xiaobing Li in China at War, an encyclopedia, Hong was a field scholar and Hakka from Guangdong. Hong created the Taiping Tiongguo, or Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was mostly Hakka people, a subset of the majority Han people who were from southern China. The Hakka were mostly peasants. The Taiping Tiongguo was Christian, as Hong believed he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ. The Taiping Tiongguo wanted to end private property and redistribute land as well as end opium importation. The Taiping Tiongguo was a branch of a small sword society, a secret underground society that opposed the Qing dynasty. Hong Xiuquan led an army expedition across China, and according to Dr. Xiaobing Li, inspired other uprisings throughout the empire. Soon the small sword society seized Shanghai and then joined the Taiping Tiongguo. Consequently, the Qing Empire was greatly weakened and nearly disappeared due to the amount of resources spent on trying to fight off the rebellion and the British in the First Opium War. Women had a large part in the rebellion, as the Hakka people had less restriction on them. For example, the Taiping believed that people should marry under mutual attraction rather than family interest. Women were allowed to take civil service exams and were appointed to supervisory positions over other women. The promises made by Taiping were equally applied to women, such as land distribution. Everywhere the Taiping Tiongguo took control adopted their philosophies during the time, and women under the Taiping Tiongguo enjoyed more rights. Unfortunately, in practice, women were not necessarily granted these rights, and Hong himself owned a harem of concubines. Due to internal fighting between Hong and the other leaders, the Taiping Rebellion began to collapse. The Qing also gained more followers from locals who were uncomfortable with the idea of women in power. In 1864, the Qing Empire overpowered the Taiping Rebellion.
The Boxer Rebellion took place in China between 1898 and 1901. It was an effort to drive out foreigners because of unequal treaties, which included the Nanjing Treaty and extraterritorial rights for foreigners that were granted by them. The Boxers wanted to drive out the foreigners so that they could get rid of the foreign influence over politics, trade, technology, and religion. The Opium Wars were one of the reasons why the Westerners gained control over China's ports. This also gave all the Western businessmen roles in the wealthy parts of the Chinese economy, and also led to the influx of Christian missionaries. The rebellion ended in a defeat from a force composed of 19,000 troops from the United States, Russia, Great Britain, France, and Japan. The Boxers were a secret Chinese society that was also called the Society of the Righteous Harmonious Fist. The Boxers fought using a martial art that they thought could protect them from the bullets. This gave them the name of the Boxers in the West because they practiced an Eastern style of boxing. They particularly targeted the Christian missionaries and the Chinese converts because the Boxers saw them as the foreigners who were ruining China's independence. Estimates of death is around 10,000. In August 14, 1900, Beijing fell to the invaders. The impact of the Boxer Rebellion was that the Boxer group demanded money from Tucci, who accepted the demands and ended up costing the Chinese government about $750 million. The repayment lasted into the 1940s. This caused Tucci dishonor and humiliation because it was seen as a bad thing that the Empress would accept these terms from the Boxers. In the short term, the Boxers were not successful because there was aggressive foreign expansion into China, especially by Japan and Russia. In the long term, it led to a nationalist movement, the 1911 Revolution, and the establishment of the Republic of China in 1912.